and start the recording. And you're in Atlanta. Wow. All right. I'll hand it over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Jumpstart for new Toastmasters and Rotary members. I'm Laura Grove, serving as your Toastmaster this evening. We have three presenters. Karen Lazan will be speaking on the Toastmasters Pathways educational program. Randy Wynn will show us how to make meetings work well. Then Todd Cutterback will explain to us how to craft extraordinary speeches. Karen will put our agenda into the chat. Karen, have you already done that? I think we saw it a little earlier, but we have a lot in the chat. It is there. There it is again. Thank you so much, Karen. After Karen's presentation, we'll take a 5-minute break. Then we'll continue with Randy's and then Todd's presentation. For my participation in Toastmasters, I have been a member of West Seattle Toastmasters Club 832 for more than 10 years. I was inspired to join Toastmasters because I was terrified of speaking in meetings at work. When called upon to speak at an all-staff meeting, I felt glued to my chair. I had a coworker whose job was to go visit other offices of our organization around the state of Washington. After one trip, he said, I was standing at the head of the table, speaking to a group of directors, and I must have been windmilling because they were all leaning away from me. Maybe I should do Toastmasters. I replied, yes, you should do Toastmasters, and I will do it with you. We were members of Harborview Toastmasters for less than a year before he moved on to another job, but that gave me my start. When I joined West Seattle Toastmasters some years later, I had regressed a little bit. When the table topics master invited me to participate, I tried to avoid his eye and sink through my chair into the floor. But I stood up and talked, and when I sat down again, I thought, hey, I survived. Then I was off and running with Toastmasters. Our Jumpstart training this evening will show you how Toastmasters can help you with public speaking and leading meetings. Our first presenter tonight is Karen Lazan, the District 2 Advanced Training Committee Chair and Vice President Education for her home club. Karen has been a Toastmaster for 10 years and served as a Pathways Guide 3 years ago for the launch of Toastmasters International's new education system and has done countless trainings since. She believes Pathways, though not without flaws, is an amazing system that will continue to grow and improve as it helps you grow and improve. She is here today to help you make the most of it with her 3 tips for success with Pathways. Please welcome Karen Lazan.
Thank you. Everybody, I want you to think what your goals are. What brought you to Toastmasters, or what brought you to the meeting tonight? All right, I just want you to think about that. And while you're thinking about it, I am going to share with you a quote from the founder of Toastmasters, Ralph Smedley. He said, communication leads to the discovery of hidden abilities, broadens the person's conception of how to live with people. It brings out for use the leadership traits and abilities, and thus helps to prepare the individual to be a leader. So that was Ralph's vision for Toastmasters. But what is your goal? What is it that you are hoping to get out of Toastmasters, or already have, since we have, then so everyone can participate? Does anybody want to share? Anyone? Confidence. Leslie says she's confident. Kendra, did you want to speak?
Sure. So I'm Kendra, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit that's one of the top 5 in the world in the Kevlar industry. And I'm behind the scenes all the time. And I am more concerned about speaking publicly, but because of my success in fundraising, other nonprofits want to learn my skills. And so I provide free services for them, but I also stutter. So Toastmasters is really helping me learn how to be able to slow down my speech and be able to use my hand gestures and communicate with others. So far to date, I've worked with 5 other nonprofits in Washington State for startups, and they have exceeded my abilities. In the first, I taught them my failures and successes using Toastmasters as an example of how to communicate. And they have their first year of having 6 years of information that I had to start out and run. So that's where I'm using Toastmasters, is to give back to the community, to teach what I know for fundraising. And so thank you for Toastmasters, because without this, I would not be able to actually speak in front of people.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else has something they'd like to share? No? All right. So, but I want you to keep in mind what your goals are for the entire time that I'm speaking tonight, because that's important to your success in Toastmasters and in Pathways, which is what I'll be talking about. I want to help facilitate this success for you. And I'm going to go over the basic structure of Pathways. And then I'm going to share my 3 tips for success that I think will help you with Pathways. I'm going to show you a bunch of resources, but they're just websites, open websites, and you don't have to worry about the links, because at the end I'm going to give you a single link that will have all the other links that I've shown you tonight. So don't worry about trying to scribble those down. Also, if you have any questions during my talk, please put them in the chat and I will get to them when we do a little bit of Q&A at the end. All right. So let's get started. First, I'm going to talk about the basic structure of Pathways. All right, so well, actually, something I want to show you before that. If you go, so this is just Toastmasters.org. If you go to the About, so this is just what I've done, all about Toastmasters, and this is where I've come up. It tells you about Toastmasters. Now, here's all the things that you can get out of Toastmasters. And who doesn't want this, right? Maximize your potential. Enjoy unlimited personal growth. Build self-confidence and awareness. And Pathways in particular helps you learn about over 300. You don't have to learn all 300 practical workplace skills that you can choose from, like interview preparation or project management. Now, who doesn't want to know this stuff, right? Raise your hand if you don't want to use it. All right, nobody's raised their hand. Of course, we all want this. So what does Pathways look like? All right, so this is the Toastmasters educational system. There are 11 paths to choose from, and here they are. It's very diverse, goes everywhere from engaging humor to strategic relationships and effective coaching. Let's just look at one of these. All the paths have 5 levels, and each level builds on the one before it. You can see the very first level is mastering fundamentals. Now, if you were a Toastmaster and you had signed up for a path before October 15th, your level 1 would look a little different than this. But I think most everyone is newer. So this is what the level 1 looks like now. There's 5 projects, and the level 1 is the same in every single path. So those 5 projects are the same no matter what path you pick. After that, you go to level 2, which is learning your style. This is mostly the same in all the paths, but there's some variations depending on what the path is. Now in levels 3, 4, and 5, this is where it gets more specific. So there will be a required project that's unique to that particular path in levels 3, 4, and 5. But there's also electives that you can choose from. And the electives are pretty much the same in every path as well. So if there's some that you didn't get to do in this path, when you sign up for your next path, you'll be able to do them. So that's the basic structure. So I want to talk about the 3 tips I have for success working through pathways. The first one is you want to pick a path that means something to you, something that really speaks to you. Now, how are you going to do that? It's pretty confusing, but I have some places that you can go to help you out with that. All right, we're going to go back, and now we're going to look at this particular graphic. This is a great graphic. It shows the 5 core competencies that you will gain going through pathways. Public speaking, of course, interpersonal communication, strategic leadership, management, and then there's confidence. Confidence you will gain no matter what, just by participating and working the program. Well, on the other side, it lists all the 11 paths. And for each, it gives you the order of emphasis for the core competencies that it covers. Now, if you notice, public speaking shows up as the first one in every single path. That's a given. That's what you're here for. But if there's something else that you're interested in, for instance, if you're interested in management, you might want to look at innovative planning, or there's another one, team collaboration, because that's the next core competency that is emphasized in that particular path. So that gives you a look at all the paths together and maybe helps you narrow it down a little bit. The next place I'm going to take you, this is a website from our friends at District 4. And they have a website that has the description of every single project in every single path. Now, of course, that's a lot. You're not going to look at all of those. But let's say you narrowed it down to like 2, 3, 4 different paths that you're interested in, that are speaking to you. My advice is to come to this website and look at the level 5. So for me, my first path that I picked is visionary communication. And the way I chose it is I looked at this particular project in level 5, the required project. And I thought, develop your vision. I thought, wow, that's really neat. I'd love to do that. That was perfect for, my time in my career and my life. So that's the one I picked, and that's how I came across it. Now, these level 5 projects, when you're looking at them, may look a little daunting, but you'll be building up to it. Don't worry about it. You can also look at the level 4's required project and the level 3 project, just to get a feeling for that particular path. Also, for each of these, you can look down at the electives, and it gives descriptions of all the electives as well. So it's a very convenient place to go when you're trying to decide which elective you want once you get up to level 3. The last site I want to share for helping you to pick a path is this video on YouTube from our fellow Toastmaster, George Marshall. And it's just a 7-minute video, and it's really terrific. Everyone that I've mentioned it to has just really loved it. And I've just given you just a quick screenshot here near the end of his video. And basically what he does is he takes all the paths and he describes them and he puts them into buckets in terms of how much leadership skills you will get out of that particular path. Really a wonderful way to look at all the paths. The last thing that you can do also is when you sign up for your path, when you go to sign up for your path, you can take a questionnaire that will ask you, they'll ask you a bunch of questions and help you figure out what path you want. And so it'll give you 3 choices. One in particular that they think is the strongest, the program, and then 2 more. I think that it's another tool to use. Personally, I took the quiz 3 times before it came up with the path I really wanted, but I think that it probably will work better. I was probably trying to game the system. But do take it. Even if you think you know what you want, do take it just to see what comes up. So that's my first tip. You definitely want to pick something that's meaningful for you. That way, that gives you a better chance to be successful and to follow through. The next tip is to be intentional about going through the projects, there's so much that that Pathways offers, all these educational materials. Also, you have other resources at your disposal. So for instance, most clubs will assign a mentor to you when you join the club. Now, if you've joined a club and you don't have a mentor, ask for one. The mentor is supposed to help you through the first level of your path. And of course, you can always ask for help beyond that as well. The other thing is really work the projects. And I'm going to show you what a project looks like. So we're going to go back to Toastmasters International. And on this page about Pathways, there is a sample of, this is the first project. This is the icebreakers. It's the first project that everybody does. So you can take a look at this, again, without being a Toastmaster. And I just want to go through it real quick. So this is what the projects look like. There'll be a little bit of instruction, there'll be an introduction, and there'll be a project checklist. No matter what project you do, you should use project checklist. Most projects are fairly simple, but not all of them. And you want to read the checklist first thing to see what is going to be expected of you to finish this project. And none of these projects, in terms of going through this online stuff, is very long. And there's all kinds of information here. First thing you'll do is you will take a skills assessment. Go ahead, please do this. And it will keep track of it for you. Nobody else sees this except you. You'll take this skills assessment, and then there'll be another one at the end after you've completed your project. There's also all through the projects, there's a number of resources, but at the end they also show all your resources again, including your evaluation resource here. Or if you wanted to print your project, you could do that. For instance, for the icebreaker, there's a speech outline worksheet, which many people find very helpful. So that's something that you can do, is go through the project, read all of the information. There's often videos interactive things. It's really a great resource for you to use. Speaking of evaluation, so I showed you that there's an evaluation resource, and Randy will talk a little bit more about evaluations when he's going through what a meeting looks like. But for those of you who have not been in Toastmasters, when you give a speech, you get evaluated by someone, and you get a written evaluation as well as an oral evaluation. Really listen to your evaluator. That is that is the foundation of Toastmasters, is that we evaluate each other for just about everything. And that's how we learn, that's how we grow. Also, listen to the evaluators for other people who are giving speeches, because you can always pick up something, some tidbit that is going to be useful to you for your next speech. There's also, I'm going to share my screen again. There's also a Toastmasters magazine. And there's lots of great articles in the Toastmasters magazine. There'll be profiles of particular Toastmasters. There's usually something on maybe humor or language. It's really a great resource, and none of the articles generally are too long, but it's really has some terrific information in it. All right, I have one more tip, but before that, I'm wondering if there is any questions. I don't see anything in the chat. Does anybody think, Donna? I don't know if you have your hand up, or I'm not sure you have any sound, Donna. Anyone else? Of course, the nuts and bolts of pathways is a whole nother talk. I just wanted to get you started on how to pick a path and what it kind of looks like. If there's anybody who wants to talk more about it in your club, talk to your club officers or your mentor and say, I need to know more about pathways, how actually how to get through the system. Or you can write me. So if there's no questions, I'm going to give you my last tip, and that is have fun. And how do you have fun? You participate. You talk as often as you can. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll trip, you'll shine. Back to you, Toastmaster Grove.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was wonderful. So, wanted to check one more time, see if there were any questions for Karen. I'm not seeing any. Next on our agenda, where there's Karen's Pathways links. Thank you for putting that in the chat, Karen. So we have that now. Next on our agenda, we are going to take a 5-minute break, but before that, Karen has a handout for Todd Cuddeback's presentation, which will be third of our 3 presentations this evening. And Karen has just put that link into the chat. So we encourage you to retrieve that while we're on our break. So we're going to take 5 minutes, and that's going to start right now. See you back in 5.
All right, recording resumed.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen. Our next presenter is Randy Wynn. Randy retired after a career in law, and before that, computer programming, and now organizes State Bar Association webinars on law and peace. Presently, Randy is the president of West Seattle Toastmasters Club 832, having been an active member of Toastmasters for over 5 years. In his professional career, Randy attended a great many meetings of a great many types with a great variation in effectiveness. I'm sure you know what he means by a great variation in effectiveness. Randy learned the hard way to ask himself before every meeting, why am I here and how does this meeting help me achieve my purpose? If your purpose is to improve your communication and leadership skills, then Toastmasters meetings are designed to help you achieve it. How that works and how you can get started making it work is the subject of Randy's presentation, Get Started in a Meeting. Please welcome Randy Wynn.
Thank you, Laura. I seem to be off mute, which is good. That's not my usual practice. I ask you, friends, to imagine me as a young man of 21 years, off to New York City to start my career as a musician. I get out at Grand Central Station and look around at the great skyscrapers in the sky and the huge crowds all around me. But what I really want to do is go to the place where all the successful musicians show that they're successful by performing. The stage everyone has heard of, Carnegie Hall. But I can't find it. I don't have a map. I wander around a little bit, and then suddenly there's one of these coincidences that happen in life. In front of me, I see a stooped old man with a cane, and under his arm, a violin case. It's Misha Cohen, the lead violinist of the New York Philharmonic. Mr. Cohen, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. This joke is older than I am, probably older than you are. It may have been carved in some fashion on the pillars of the Acropolis or the pyramids or because it expresses a truth, a real truth. If we want to get good at something, it's helpful to talk with experts, read manuals and books, participate in Zoom discussions like this one right now. But sooner or later, we reach the point where the way to get really good is to practice. Practice, practice. If you're interested in developing your communications or leadership skills, Toastmasters provides you the opportunity to do that. I'm tasked here with telling you about Toastmasters meeting, and I want to go at it from the point of view of it being full of opportunities for you. I'll go into the details instantly. But first, let me tell you that there's a bunch of roles at Toastmasters meetings, which I will put into the chat here. Toastmasters meetings vary from club to club because, you know, the clubs are all different. Everyone's different. But most of them have the roles which are outlined right here in chat. And don't think of them as jobs you have to do. Think of them as opportunities to practice your communications or leadership skills. The first role, the role we all know about, is the Toastmaster. It's right here in the name of the organization, right? The Toastmaster is the person who organizes the meeting, both before the meeting, in setting up an agenda, and during the meeting, during the course of the meeting. Let me put here in chat a sample agenda for a typical Toastmasters meeting. In creating this agenda before the meeting, that's the first thing the Toastmaster does to practice their leadership. They organize who does what, when it happens, and you'll notice that there's little times next to each activity. This is really important. Have you ever been at a meeting where you need to consider three things? It's an hour-long meeting. You go 45 minutes on the first item, you're 10 minutes into the second item, and then you think with a sinking feeling, I really wanted to talk about the third item, but we've only got 5 minutes left. We're going to have another meeting. Nobody wants another meeting. That's why Toastmasters agendas tend to have times next to the various tasks that have happened, so that as the meeting goes on, the Toastmaster compares the task that we're at with the time that we're at. And if we're falling behind, it's the job of the Toastmasters to say, friends, it's 7:30. We're either going to have to speed things up or cut things out. What would you like to do? This is helpful in real life, in a real life meeting, to ensure that you get done everything that the meeting was intended for, or make a conscious choice what to cut out. Practicing this as Toastmaster helps us get over the problem of speaking up in a meeting and saying when we're late. The Toastmaster does a bunch of other things too, encouraging speakers, introducing them, minor speaking roles. But for my money, the thing you learn and practice as Toastmaster is simply running a meeting, and that is a skill that is super useful in many places of life. The second major role at Toastmaster, or I meant to say opportunity, is that of prepared speaker. Most of the Pathways projects in the Pathways learning experience that Karen talked about earlier involves some form of prepared speech. Not all of them, but most of them. They give you a structure of a speech which you compose and then deliver. This is an opportunity for you to do two things. Number one is to put together a speech, to write it. Number two, stand on the podium or face into your computer camera and deliver it. The ability to deliver prepared speeches is useful in a lot of parts of life. When I was at work, I would often have to talk about things for 5 minutes or so. Having Toastmasters experience made it easier for me to get through my speeches without hemming and hawing and doing my customary ums. That gave me a lot more credibility. Most of the prepared speeches we give at Toastmasters are on the Pathways program, but if you're going to give a speech at some other venue, for instance, you have a presentation at work, or maybe you're delivering the toast for your brother-in-law's wedding, why not bring it to Toastmasters meeting and deliver it to your club? It's a supportive environment. People will give you useful feedback. And when you go back to work and give that presentation, or when you stand up in front of 300 new relatives, it will not have been the first time you made that speech. The third role we want to consider is the companion to the prepared speaker. It is the speech evaluator. A really valuable part of the Toastmasters experience is that for every prepared speech, one member of the audience has the job of listening very carefully. What the evaluator listens for are twofold. First, there's the standard technical things, listening for colorful language and jargon, and basically having an opportunity to tell the speaker how it felt to you as a listener. However, the evaluator also makes an effort to connect with the speaker before the meeting to find out what particular objectives the speaker wants to attain. For instance, the speaker might say, for this speech, I want to focus on slowing down, or I want to focus on vocal variety. And then the evaluator will pay special attention to those features and give supportive feedback. I see in chat that there's a very reasonable request, which is, where do we get descriptions of these? And I promise when I'm done yapping, I will put the link to the official list right there in chat. Thank you for the question. Keep them coming. We've talked about prepared speeches, and we've talked about the evaluator role. But before we get off the evaluator role, I want to mention there's another thing that being an evaluator does. The primary purpose of the evaluator is to help the speaker learn to do better. And you don't have to be an expert speaker to be a really good evaluator. Remember, we've all been listening all our life. We may or may not have great technical skills in describing why a speech moved us or bored us, but we know in our hearts that we were moved by that thing we heard, or we were bored to tears. And either one of those are useful things to know, although that last thing you might want to say very gently. Therefore, I urge you to sign up to be an evaluator just as soon as you like, because the speaker needs to hear how their speech sounded to you. Also, serving as an evaluator will give you experience listening. It gives you a structured purpose for listening so that you learn to listen harder. One last detail about the evaluator role. I used to lead a team, and I loved everything about leading the team except evaluating people, evaluating performance. It's just hard for some of us to give people the news or to evaluate objectively and usefully. Practicing evaluations at Toastmasters can help you get over that hump so that you can perform your leadership role at work or wherever you are more effectively as an evaluator. Now, we've talked about prepared speeches. Another type of speech is the unprepared speech or extemporaneous speech. This is how we experience most of life, right? You're at a party, someone comes up and talks to you. Very rarely do you haul out a prepared speech. If you come home and your spouse asks you where you've been, if you have a speech prepared, there's probably a reason. Toastmasters practices extemporaneous speech with a game we call Table Topics. The Table Topics master will pick out a theme of some sort and then call upon volunteers. When you raise your hand to volunteer, they give you a prompt, a surprise question, and you immediately launch into a 1 to 2 minute unprepared response. Try to be responsive to what they asked you, or try to dodge it somehow. This is a useful skill in many parts of life. It's also a lot of fun. I have to say, there are many opportunities for table topics to be very enjoyable. Mostly, we have talked about roles that have to do with the communications aspect, but there's also the leadership aspect to Toastmasters. That's where the general evaluator comes in. The speech evaluators evaluate speeches. The general evaluators evaluate the whole meeting, how things went as a meeting. There's a long list of things which general evaluators can tick off, like, did these various parts of the meeting start on time? Was everybody prepared? When we meet physically, was the room set up? I would urge you to consider being a general evaluator. It's a very structured role. And if you're a person who likes checkoff lists, that's super useful. There is room for creativity, as the general evaluator can take special note of things that worked really well or things that seemed odd. For instance, the general evaluator might note that my lighting has flickered here and there because as I move in and out, the camera makes different adjustments for the light shining off my skull. That's a very useful tip the general evaluator might make. The general evaluator also serves as the MC or introducer of the other evaluation roles. One of the other evaluation roles is the timer. Every major speaking event, such as a prepared speech or an evaluation, is timed by the timer because we have target time ranges. When you have to give a speech in the outside world, usually you have a time frame, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that. So practicing getting your speaking done within that range is really useful. And the way that it is done, Laura is showing us right now. When I got to the minimum range of my speech, she changed her background to green with a G, because not everybody sees every color. Now I've gotten to the middle range of my speech, she changed it to yellow. And can you guess what happens when I get to the farthest edge of my speech? That's right. Time to wrap it up. The hook's coming out. Practice the useful art of ending your speech. Even if you didn't get that last joke in, the timer does a great job. We also usually have a grammarian or a counter. These are two roles which are often combined. The grammarian's job is to take note of especially useful turns of phrases or bits of speech. The counter does things such as, the counter's job is to keep track of those filler words that we throw in, like ahs and ums and so forth, the purpose of which is to encourage us to avoid using them. There are many roles in a Toastmasters meeting. Think of them all as opportunities to practice your leadership and communication skills. Practice these communications and leadership skills, and someday I'll see you at Carnegie Hall.
Thank you, Randy. That was fantastic. Next, we will go to our third speaker for the evening, who is Todd Cuddeback. Todd Allen Cuddeback is from the nationally acclaimed talk radio show Life Mastery Radio with Todd and Jackie. Presently, Todd is the District 2 Toastmasters Rotary Alliance Coordinator. He is a past District 2 Director of the Toastmasters International Organization. Todd has been a member of Toastmasters for almost 11 years and has been involved in District 2 leadership for 9 of those 11 years. Todd knows what it is like, struggling to create a speech and sometimes with short notice. With some research and trial by fire, Todd has formulated this process that will have you crafting extraordinary, clear, concise, and compelling top-notch speeches in very little time that will get results and be memorable. Today, Todd is working on a Pathways project, Persuasive Speaking, and his presentation is titled, How to Craft a Speech. Todd is also an author of the book, 6 Keys to Life Mastery. You can find out more at his website, www.toddallen.net. Please give a warm welcome for Toastmasters Rotary Coordinator, Distinguished Toastmaster, Todd Allen Cuddeback.
Oh, that's me. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to a Jumpstart. I'm glad to see some familiar faces I haven't seen in a while. Hi, Gwen. I haven't seen you in forever. And I want to welcome Leslie. Leslie is a brand new Toast. She's so new that we don't even have her in the Toastmasters International system yet. So hopefully very soon she'll get me that application. But I do believe that she will be joining Snohomish County Toastmasters. Welcome, Leslie. I'm glad you came because this will be, you'll be our guinea pig. We'll just see how this little program works on those new people. And I can tell you that this program is designed and structured to support that very person, the brand spanking new Toastmaster. This is what it's all about, and providing them the ability to grow, learn, and experience what we've already heard, that confidence that we gain. And it's just so magical. We gain it just by showing up and doing things. And it turns into this magical experience. So welcome to all of you that are new, and I hope you get something out of today. So let's talk about speeches. And it's one of the hardest things for a brand new Toastmaster to figure out. And it's kind of kind of a trial by fire experience. And then you get some feedback and you tweak it a little bit. Well, I'm going to show you today an easy way to craft a speech. Now, hopefully everybody got my handout. Usually what I'll do if I'm in person, I'll print this on a piece of cardstock on both sides so that I have it as a handy reference, or that when I pass it out, they have it as a handy reference. So you could do that, or you can just keep this file, but work with it. I'm going to, right out of the gate, I'm just going to tell you, work with this, work with speeches. I'm not saying this is the way you should do it, but by working with it, you're going to come up with your own way of crafting a speech. And use some of these tips today, and I'll have you crafting extraordinary, clear, concise, compelling, top-notch speeches in very little time that will get results and be memorable. Now, what is a speech? A speech is something that I believe comes from an expert's heart, right? You're showing up to give a speech about something and you're considered to be an expert. And if you're going to come and give a speech and read from a speech word for word, you might as well just create a blog post and give me the link, right? A speaker delivering a speech, their main objective is to connect with that audience. And that, I call it being content ready. And part of what we're going to go through today is how you get content ready with the content you want to deliver, the content that you're showing up to deliver, the content that you're showing up as an expert to deliver. That's what we're going to do. Oh, look, my home phone is ringing. Must be a phone call from God. Who else could be calling me when the phone is supposed to be silenced? No, we're just kidding. That's a bad joke. I heard that on the stage once, and I've always waited to be able to do that. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's refer to this handout. First, I want to tell you that a lot of this came from a woman called Gail Larson. You might want to write that down, Gail Larson. I went and took a couple of her workshops. I spent a week with her, and she wrote a book called Transformational Speaking. It's a good read. It's a short read. And she talks about speaking from the heart, just like I referred to. So Gail Larson, Transformational Speaking, amazing woman. She was the first woman president of the National Speakers Bureau. So there you go. But let's refer to this handout. Now, what we're going to talk about, we're going to look at some things to consider before crafting a speech. We're going to take a look at some things that you might want to research. And then we're going to take a look at a long proven, perfectly good way to craft a speech, an outline that was created many, many years ago by a man named Aristotle. Anybody ever heard of Aristotle before? Well, we'll take a look at that here in just a little while. But let's take a look at some things that we should consider before we even start to craft a speech. And the first up is, what is your topic? Now, this can be a dynamic thing. This can change, but what's the topic? I've heard some very amazing speeches in my time in Toastmasters. And a couple of times I've thought, wow, that was really great information, great presentation. But what was the topic? What was the topic? So you want to make sure that you are well-grounded in what the topic is. Like I said, it can be dynamic and it can change, but start out with knowing what your topic is. The second thing you want to consider is, what is the one main message? What is the one main message you want to get across to that audience? What do you want them to leave with? Now, you might already picked up on my one main message today, but I'll state it again, because that's what you should do during your speech, is make sure that that one main message gets repeated. And the reason is because I'll have you crafting extraordinary, clear, concise, and compelling top-notch speeches in very little time that will get results and be memorable. There, you know my one main message for today. You'll hear it a couple more times, trust me. But what is your one main message? What do you want that audience to come away with? Now, the next thing is your call to action. Now, the one main message and the call to action can kind of meld together. They can be the one thing, but what do you want your audience member to do? Do you want them to go to a website? Do you want them to check you out? I'm sorry. I was going to say, you heard in my introduction, I'm not here to sell you a book, but I use that as an example. Yes, I do have a book, but I use that as an example because in that introduction, it paved the way. And I talked about my book. And now that your ears got perked up, you might want to go and check that book out. So what is your call to action? What is it that you want the audience to do? What do you want them to see? Do you want them to send you an email? What is that going to be? So get clear. That's another dynamic thing. It can change. But if you have a topic, you pretty much have a one main message you want to get across and a call to action. Now let's refer to page 3 of my handout. This is how I start every speech. And basically, I have a sheet of paper with 3 stars on it for my points. And you can see across the top, I have the open and one main message. I usually put that on the top there somewhere so it's fresh on my mind. But list out some points. So what we want to do is we want to take this sheet of paper, split it into 3 sections like I have there with those 3 stars, and list out your points. And you write a sentence about that point. So I want to get this point across and just quickly write out a sentence. Don't spend a whole lot of time with it. Go to your second point, write out a sentence, what you want to get out on that point. And then for a third one, now, typically in Toastmasters, our speeches are 3 to 5 minutes. I'm telling you right now, 3 points in that 3 to 5 minutes is about the max. Okay, so that's why there's 3 there. In Toastmasters, a 5 to 7 minute speech, 3 points, and that's about it. That's about all your audience is going to be able to grasp in that amount of time. So I'll write those points out and a couple sentences that about it that come to my mind, and I might sit with that for a while. Now, this process can also be used for evaluations. So if you're going to give somebody a speech evaluation, you don't have much time to sit with it. So you got to kind of hustle that up a little bit, but I might just sit with it, let it stew, and then I'll come back to it and expand on those points. I might come up with some anecdotes or some kind of an example or start to formulate some stories. I'm going to tell you something about stories. Stories are the way that we communicate. And when we communicate with stories, it has the ability to create stiction in people's minds because they remember the stories. We're humans. We're storytellers. That's how you can anchor your point, is with the story. Now, another man that I studied, his name is Bill Gove. And Bill Gove is no longer with us, but he will live forever in infamy, trust me. And you can Google him. Bill Gove is probably considered to be the grandfather of public speaking as it is today. And Bill was a storyteller. And that's the third thing we want to try and do here is incorporate stories. So this is how Bill would write a speech. Bill would get a phone call from an event. Back in those days, conventions were a big thing, and Bill was a popular guy to have at your convention. He would get a call, "Hey, Bill, can you come to our convention and speak?" And he'd say, "Sure, what do you want? What's the topic?" And they would give him a topic or what the event was about, and he would write that down and he'd get ready. And so on his way to the speech, on his way to this event, Bill had, remember the recipe card boxes, the 3x5 cards? He had all of his stories on cards. And on the way to the event, this is the way he would talk about it. He'd say, on the way to the event, I'd pull out that card file and I'd say, okay, I'm going to make this point and tell this story, and I'll make this point and I'll tell this story, and I'll make this point and tell that story. And then he'd formulate some kind of open, with some jokes and something that pertained to the topic or what this event was about. And he'd formulate a close so that it would be memorable. And bada boom, bada bang, Bill showed up with the speech. That's the way he did it. My point here is stories are memorable. And if you can get in the habit and practice of making a point and telling a story, you're going to be memorable, because stories definitely stick in people's minds. Okay, we talked about putting those points out, go back over it and write some more about it. I could tell you that when I'm writing a speech, I'll probably fill up 2 or 3 pieces of paper and then condense it to another one, because I've gotten what I call content ready, right? I know I just have to have short little notes about that information. So 2 or 3 pieces of paper later, I pretty much got a speech cooking and it's in my mind. But that's what I want to talk about next, is structure. Now, there's 2 really good reasons that you should have some kind of structure in your speech. Anybody want to take a guess? Unmute yourself and just throw it out there if you know. There's 2 really good reasons for structure. Anybody have an idea? Oh, come on, somebody throw something out there. Oh, here comes Dennis.
On topic.
What?
To keep you on topic.
Yay, ding, 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 ding. That's the number 1. It's to keep the speaker organized, because you know how your speech is going to flow if you've got some kind of structure, and it's easier for you to remember if you know that structure. Pretty simple. The second reason for structure is it makes it easy for the audience member to follow along. And maybe even in your open, you can give a hint to that structure so that they've already paved the way of the way your speech is going to flow. Pro tip, a couple of magic tricks there. So there's different ways of structuring. I've given some examples on this page, whatever it is, find some way of structuring your speech. My favorite is number 4. Number four is probably the way the shelf help. Notice I said shelf help book industry is not self-help, shelf help, because most self-help books end up on the shelf. That's funny, God. But that's the shelf help industry, right? You've got a problem. I have the solution. I can be your rescue ranger. So that's a good one. I have a very good friend, actually, my co-host. She's really into acronyms, and you'll hear a lot coming from Jackie Bailey. She'll say the 3 L's of leadership or something along those lines, but you'll hear speakers talk about that. And that's a great way to have structure, because it's easier for you to remember and it's easy for the audience to follow along. My point is here, find some kind of structure to make it easy on you. Okay, now we're going to move on to some items to research. And the first thing is to know your audience. We've heard this over and over and over again, but who's your audience? Make sure that your speech is applicable to them. If you were talking to an audience of an older generation, right? And you showed up and you were talking about rap musicians, they probably wouldn't know what you're referring to, right? So know your audience, and that will help you maybe come up with some anecdotes, something that applies to them or something that they can relate to and grab their attention right out of the gate. So you want to know your audience, and I'm going to tell you, the audience is going to show up. The audience members are asking 3 things. Who are you? What's in this for me? And why should I care? Who are you, the presenter or the speaker? What's in this for me? And why should I care? You want to make sure somewhere in those points, you reiterate that. Now, another great place to answer these questions is in introductions. And I'll talk about introductions here in a little while. And I'll just say this, introductions pave the way for you to come out on stage, and the audience should automatically know who you are, where you're from, You heard in my introduction that I'm a radio show host. Usually when that's in the introduction, people, you can watch people in a live audience, they'll just lean in and their ears kind of fold over because they want to know more. This guy's a talk radio show host. I want to hear some more. That's kind of why I put that in that intro. It wasn't to get you to go listen. You could go listen to my show, but it wasn't for that reason at all. I'm just kidding. So you got to answer those 3 questions. Next thing, you're an expert. You're considered an expert. You're showing up to speak about a topic. But, you know, we live in a world of Google or DuckDuckGo or Firefox, whatever you want to call it. There's always more to learn. So Google it, check it out, surf around, see what other people are thinking. There might be some new information. You might come across some great quotes. Quotes are cool. I'm going to tell you something about quotes. If you quote somebody, make sure you tell people who that quote comes from. That is a sign of, what do I want to say? A little bit of humility, but you're giving that person credit. Something else that you'll hear people say, and especially speakers, you'll hear them say, science today says blah, 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 blah. What science? Make sure you tell us what scientist said that, what institute did the research. If you just blurt out science says, okay, well, there's no backup. So make sure you say that. Usually I say that in the beginning, you know, science says that when we handwrite things out, I forgot to say that in the beginning, when we handwrite things out and not crank on the computer, it sticks to our brain a little bit. And I have yet to go and research what science says that. I usually use that as an example. So, and I always say, I'm going to go check that out. And I always forget. But anyway, that's a perfectly good example. So if you're going to say that, make sure you give people credit for that. The next thing you want to research and understand is how that topic reflects to you. Why is it that you're so passionate about that topic? Why is it that topic is so strong in your expertism? Boy, that was a long way around the horn. But how does that topic relate to you? Why are you so passionate about it? I'm going to tell you something about passion. Passion is infectious. And when people pick up on your passion, they're going to get passionate too, or want to know more, or they're going to remember it better. So just remember that passion. So if you can reflect that passion in your presentation or your speech, it's going to create that stiction. So learn about how that topic relates to you. Why is it that you're so passionate about it? And get clear about that. Maybe put something in your points about that. Okay, we are done with page 1. Any quick questions? Oh, goodness, there's a couple in chat. Oh, nope, I guess not. I saw 2 messages, but people are just putting notes there. Any questions? Just unmute yourself. I'm an interactive guy, so if you want to ask me something anytime. Nope, I don't see anybody unmuting. Okay, we're moving on. Here we are. Aristotle's outline to craft a speech. This was created many, 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 many years ago, and it's still around today. Anybody have an idea why it's still around today? Anybody have? Oh, looks like Karen's saying something. No?
Because it works.
There you go. This is also the way we learn in college to craft an essay, right? You tell them what you're going to tell them. And in the body, you tell them. And then in the close, you tell them what you told them. Now, I broke it down and I referred to the first page. You can see the small letters in brackets that refers to the first page. So you always want to open up and get that audience lightened up, right? Tell a joke, an anecdote, make a remark, something to get them giggling and laughing and feeling comfortable. you definitely want to make sure in that open that you state the main reason or what the topic is. So somehow refer to your topic so that they know what the topic is. Somehow, some way, get your one main message in there and pave the way. Pave the way for the audience. What is it? This is the main meat and potatoes of this. What is it that you're going to tell them? Take them through step by step, give them some hints. Somehow, we're just like I said, we're going to take a look at some things to consider. We're going to take a look at some things to research, and we're going to take a look at Aristotle's outline to craft a speech. So pave the way, give some hint to your structure. What's your structure going to be? This is the 3 L's of leadership, or you have this problem and I have the solution, something along those lines. In the body, this is where your points come in. And the more you work with your points, the more you get familiar with the content of those points, you're going to be able to stand up in front of that audience and just let this speech flow out of your heart. Now, here's a pro tip too. Oh my goodness, green already? Phew, I'm just smoking. I better hurry up. What was I going to say? Oh, the audience will never know what you don't tell them. That's a secret. As speechwriters, we get attached to every word, and it has to be said just like this, and the point has to be made just like that. But they'll never know what you don't tell them. So just let that, and this does take practice. That's why we have this program called Toastmasters. We show up with a speech and we practice delivery, we practice style, we practice all of those things. And what I want you to focus on practicing is delivering a speech with very little notes. Let that speech flow right through you. Now they say for every minute of a speech, you should spend rehearsing an hour. That might be a little extreme for a Toastmasters speech, but for like a 45-minute keynote, it's critical. Content ready. That's the biggest thing is just, and once you're content ready, that material will just flow through you and out, and you will tell the audience exactly what you want to hear. Some of the best speeches I've delivered, people have come up to me afterwards and said, man, I really like what you said with da da this and da da that. And I have to tell them, okay, remind me just a little bit what it was that I said, because this thing just flowed out of me. Gail Larson calls it being in the zone or speaking from that home place. And it is exactly that. You're content ready, you're connected with the audience, and that speech just flows right through you. Okay, I think that was easy enough. Let's just quickly take a look at an introduction. You know, it's the same as Aristotle's outline. And I gave you, that's the example that Laura read for my introduction, and that open should capture the audience's attention. All speeches in Toastmasters should have an introduction. You should get very familiar with how to craft an introduction. It's very good practice. Now, I'll tell you, sometimes you'll give the MC your introduction, and guess what? They don't even read it. And so if that happens, you somehow have to preface who you are and why you're there in the opening of your speech. And it gets a little tricky, but with practice, you can pull it off. But introductions pave the way for you to come out on stage, and they give all the information on how people can connect to you, what you're about, why you're here to give that speech. And in Toastmasters, all introductions should include the path, the project, and then the speech title. And I see more and more these days that a lot of clubs don't really put a thumb on this and get people to do that, but there's plenty of spaces. The Toastmaster should have that information before the meeting starts. And that way you don't have to talk about any of that stuff. And it takes, here's the trick. You don't have to talk about any of that stuff. So you got more time to talk about the good stuff. right? Because you don't have to pave the way for the audience. I talked about having my book in the introduction. And the reason I did that was for this example. If you move on and get to be a good speaker and you hang out in Toastmasters long enough, I'm telling you, you will get good, because this is the place we practice. And you might have products or services that you're peddling. Do not sell from the stage. Do not peddle your products as part of your presentation. You're there as an expert about your field, and you want to talk about the things that you're an expert in, but that introduction is the place to talk about those kinds of things. In the close, you could say something like, and I'll be in the back of the room after this presentation signing my book, so come back and say hi, right? It's a great way to pave the way for that. Okay, I've got the red, and what we're really ahead of schedule, but here's the deal. Work with this handout, work with this process, and I guarantee you, you will be crafting extraordinary, clear, concise, and compelling top-notch speeches in very little time that will get results and be memorable. So now, go do it. And it works for evaluations too. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Todd. That was fascinating and great information. So, thank you to all our presenters this evening, Karen Lazan, Randy Wynn, and Todd Cutterback. We appreciate your experience and knowledge of the Toastmasters program. Toastmasters skills contribute to life in conducting meetings, giving speeches, and in any situation that calls for accomplished communication skills. My experience in Toastmasters has helped me in job interviews, workplace meetings, and volunteer leadership in professional associations. It has also helped me with the occasional crucial conversation and being able to be more prepared and less apprehensive about important communication with others. In Toastmasters, I have served in the officer roles of secretary, treasurer, vice president education, and president. These roles have helped me develop my talents into real skills. I am no longer terrified to speak in meetings at work. Toastmasters meetings on Zoom helped me make the transition to remote work when the pandemic started, and now help me collaborate with other professional association volunteers to present programs online. Whatever your goals in your professional or volunteer life, Toastmasters will enable you to achieve them. We look forward to seeing you in a meeting soon. Thank you.